to each and every one of you. I greet you in the name of the God of our forebears, the beneficent, the merciful. It is truly my honor this morning and privilege to be here today as we reflect on the first 100 days of Action SA's Parliamentary Caucus performance and offer a critical review of the ANC-led Government of National Unity's 7th administration. My name is Lerato Ngobeni. In these first 100 days, Action SA has made it clear in Parliament that we are not here to play politics as usual. Our party stands firm in our duty to hold this government accountable, to push for solutions that genuinely serve our country and challenge any failure to deliver on the mandate to change our people's lives. We were elected by South Africans who are tired of excuses, tired of corruption, and tired of being forgotten by those in power. The GNU's 7th administration, however, has already shown signs of falling into the same old patterns, inefficiencies, lack of transparency, and failing to be robust in the stance to put South Africans first. But Action SA has not sat back in silence. We have led robust engagement in committees, tabled motions that put South African-centric, and continue to hold the government accountable on every front, from the collapsing state of public services to the ongoing failure to curb corruption. Our work is just beginning. In these next few months and beyond, we will continue to be the people's voice. We will demand integrity in governance and push forward the agenda of economic revival, the rule of law, and justice for all South Africans. And so today, we present not just a review, but a clear signal that Action SA remains relentless in our commitment to building a better future for our country. We are here to lead, to fight for real change, and to give South Africa a government that works for the people and not against them. With these few words, let me introduce my esteemed Super 6 colleagues who have demonstrated that we have the gumption that is required to do this work. I am proud to lead this team alongside our Parliamentary Caucus Chairperson, and he is to my right, the Honorable Dr. Kgosi Letlhapa, our Caucus Leader, the Honorable Ethel Trollip, our dynamo social justice activist, the Honorable Darrelyn James, who's on my left, the accountability or nothing else champion, the Honorable Ellen Beasley, who's on the other side, and the fierce Giyani Water Project and Service Delivery defender, the Honorable Malebu Kobe, who is also the youngest and most promising and talented politician we have in this caucus. So today's proceedings are going to be quite simple. They are going to run in this fashion. First, we're going to have the Honorable Ethel Trollip, who is our caucus leader, as previously mentioned, and he will tell us in detail why we are here today. He will then be followed by the Honorable Ellen Beasley. No, I lied, actually. He'll be followed by myself again. It's only the next time I'll be back here. And then I will be followed by Ellen Beasley. And then he'll be followed by the Honorable Dr. Kgosi Letlhapa, who will be followed by the Honorable Darrelyn James. And finally, the Honorable Malebu Kobe will deliver her reflections. All of the members of Parliament are going to be really just giving reflections, their own reflections and their own commitment to the journey, and also how the first 100 days have gone for them so far, as well as projects and issues that they will be championing going forward. Thank you all very much. Let me welcome to the floor the Honorable Ethel Trollip.
Very dramatic. You're very. Yes.
Thank you very much. Our party chairperson says very melodramatic with the wind. Well, the wind is hectic out there. Thanks very much for coming. As Lerato said, everyone will introduce themselves and give some reflections, so I'll start with that. It'll be very brief. I've spent 20 years as an elected public office bearer prior to coming to Parliament now in 2024. and it was an interesting time. I served on all 4 spheres of government: district council, provincial legislature, parliament, and the local council in Nelson Mandela Bay. And I'd come to the end of my political work, I thought, until Herman Mashaba and Michael Beaumont invited me to a meeting in Johannesburg and basically tried to convince me to come and join them to help them fix South Africa. I'll truncate that discussion because it was a long meeting and a long discussion. And at the end of it, I said to Herman Mashaba, thanks very much, but I've had enough. And his response basically was, have you done enough? And I reflected on that, the most profound political question I've ever had, on the way home. And I realized that I come from a broken province in a broken society, actually, and that I clearly had not done enough. And I found myself back in Parliament to make sure that one day when I do stop doing what I'm doing, I can say that I did enough. So that's an incredible privilege and a great challenge to me, and I'm very happy to be fulfilling it back in Parliament. What I found very attractive to join this party, Action SA, was Herman Mashaba and his pioneer colleagues started this party through a people's dialogue and got many South Africans encouragement to start something new, to offer those homeless and disillusioned members of other political parties something different. And I'm, as I said, honored to be part of that something different, and we're going to talk today about what it is that we offer that is different. We came to Parliament with 6 members, which is less than what we expected, but more than what many other political parties that have been around for 30 years have in Parliament. So it was disappointing somewhat, but what hasn't been disappointing is the caliber of colleagues that I serve with in Parliament, and our work to date has not gone unnoticed. So I'm going to run through what we have achieved, what we're focusing on doing in the future, and this statement is available to you. But let me just say that we took an oath 122 days ago that we would serve our country and we would honor the Constitution. And it's been about 100 days that the new government of national unity stroke Grand Coalition has been in power. And we promised to be a constructive opposition, and I believe that we've fulfilled that promise to date. We also occupy a really important rational centre in Parliament, I believe. We now have a government that has nearly 70% control of Parliament, which is a massive bloc, powerful bloc, and a bloc that can easily abuse their powers in Parliament. And in opposition, we have a new political party that doesn't appear to have any strategic direction other than opposing their former colleagues. And we have the EFF that has been around for 10 years but seems to have lost some of its direction. So they masquerade as the Progressive Caucus with other members from other political parties, when in actual fact they are more like a regressive caucus. So our position in between those two blocs is a really important position and something that we believe South Africa needs. At every opportunity, Action SA has shown that we do not take our representation in Parliament lightly. We've utilised every available parliamentary mechanism to ensure that the voices, concerns and aspirations of ordinary South Africans are amplified in Parliament. The majority of our caucus have never served in Parliament, and I think that's what one of our major strengths is, because they are professional people that come from all walks of life, and they bring that professionalism and passion to their work in Parliament. Our caucus has made presentations or representations in every committee, where members simultaneously scrutinised annual performance plans, budget presentations, and making submissions on multiple committees. Each one of us serves on 2 committees, but as you know, you cannot be in 2 places at once. But some of us have shown that you can almost do that. Dr. Lechape, I think, attended every one of the budget committees, and he made a profound impact and has now become a household personality and certainly a parliamentary personality. We've committed, as I said, to being a constructive opposition, and our voting record on the July appropriation cycle demonstrates our balanced approach. We supported 26 budget votes while maintaining principled objections to 15 of them. I overheard one of the members of the GNU actually commending us in a sitting where they said, now that's proper opposition. where we didn't, like other opposition parties, oppose every budget. We supported those that we could, and we opposed those that we couldn't. And I think that's the role of an effective, constructive opposition. When you consider our relative size, we have written 100 questions to the executive for their reply, and it demonstrates that we have maximized every limited opportunity for questions provided to us by the parliamentary rules. Action SA has been present in every parliamentary plenary session. We've posed questions to every cabinet cluster during executive question and reply sessions, and used every opportunity available to us. And I think that's the yardstick of a good opposition party. You might not be able to reach everything, but you must use every available opportunity. We have coined the phrase that we are the Super Six, and our president told us we must come to Parliament and perform like we are 60. I mean, that's one hell of a yardstick and challenge, but we have done well, I believe. Since our election in the 7th Parliament, Action SA has made a number of key observations about the work of Parliament and the need for urgent reforms to improve its functions as the bastion of democracy. The true measure of Parliament's effectiveness lies in holding the executive to account. And when the executive adopt adversarial postures, it's up to us to counter that and do whatever we can to prevent that kind of political majoritarianism that we've seen for 30 years in South Africa, which still prevails, incidentally. Of concern is the urgent need for the Deputy President, who is the leader of government business, to make sure that we hold him to account, and to make sure that the ministers who come and answer questions in Parliament come properly prepared and give us proper answers. Unfortunately, we've seen the bad habit of simply giving rudimentary, cursory responses in Parliament continuing even in the 7th dispensation. To address the fact that the current executive isn't accounting properly, we will continue to ensure that we are active participants in both Parliament's Programming Committee and Rules Committee, and will further engage with the Speaker to ensure that these matters are remedied so that we can maximize our effectiveness. In that regard, our Chief Whip, Lerato Ngobeni, plays a very significant role. She has a strong track record of management and leadership in her previous life, and she has displayed that magnificently in those committees. Over the last 3 months, Action SA has shown a fierce appetite for holding the Grand Coalition to account, and this includes leading the charge to hold the Minister of Justice accountable, writing numerous letters to the President, the Public Protector, and the Speaker. And I want to just say in that regard, it's sometimes very difficult to do the right thing, but you have to do the right thing if you've committed to doing that, and we will hold this Minister to account to the very last opportunity that we have. We tried the President, no response. We tried the Speaker, no response. We tried the Public Protector, no response. We've laid criminal charges. But we're not going to stop there, because on Thursday this week, the President's coming to Parliament, and I'm going to be asking him what he's going to do about his minister, who has this cloud of controversy hanging over her head. We have, in various committees and through direct correspondence with ministers, our members have interrogated departments and state functionaries, focusing on ensuring that we elevate the issues impacting our communities to the responsible authorities. This work has ensured that South Africans have direct access to government. Last night, Dereline James told us that she had championed the fact that in Eldorado Park, where she comes from, there were no police vehicles. She tells me that on Tuesday, 2 brand new police vehicles will be delivered to the Eldorado police station. Now, that's the kind of work that proper MPs do. They don't just point fingers, they make sure that where there is a deficiency, that the deficiency is addressed, and that is the kind of work that we expect from each other in this caucus. Recently, Malebo Kobe joined the Minister and the Deputy President in Giyani, in Limpopo, where she comes from, because the people of Giyani have not had water for many, many years, and the project costs have ballooned out of complete, I don't know, sanity to something incredible, yet they don't have water. They don't all have water. The Deputy President was trying to tell us about the fact that the people of Giyani have water. It's not true. Some people in Giyani have water, but the whole Giyani community still does not have water. Our members have shown a passionate commitment to their portfolio committees, and this last week doing oversight was an eye-opener for them as new members of Parliament, Parliament, and they have realized how important it is to actually go and see for yourself what's happening on the ground. Our immediate priority in Parliament is around ethics and accountability. Ethical leadership is a key tenet of Action SA, informed by our belief that you cannot build a house on unstable foundations. Our arrival in Parliament has revealed that the rot runs much deeper than we ever anticipated, with profligacy and excessive perks indicative of a system that has departed from one of public service to one that prioritizes self-service and extravagance. And what has become apparent is that even those political parties who pretended to oppose this profligacy previously have succumbed to it and moved into it rather seamlessly and comfortably. So we will be looking at updating the ministerial handbook that is related to our bloated cabinet that costs this country more than R1 billion annually, and we will make sure that the necessary changes are brought to that. Our Chief Whip, Lerato Ngobeni, is also making sure that we will address the issue, the lacuna that has arisen with people that are compromised being elected to Parliament. We want to make sure that people who are compromised beyond bankruptcy and non-rehabilitated insolvency, or people who have been sentenced to jail for more than a year, that it includes people that have been impeached from high public office serving as members of Parliament. So Lerato will be driving that in Parliament, because there is a conundrum currently around Dr. John Hlophe and Member of Parliament Mkhwebane from the EFF. To this end, we've already written to the Parliament's Joint Constitutional Review Committee to call for a thorough review of applicable legislation, rules, frameworks to ensure that eligibility standards for public office bearers are consistent and transparent. Some people didn't understand our press statement in this regard. We want to make sure that we do not have members of Parliament that are compromised, rather than having a debate whether a compromised member of Parliament can attend a committee or not. That is ex post facto. We need to make sure it doesn't happen. Our medium-term priority is focused on fighting deep-rooted corruption in society and in government. By every available indicator, corruption remains rampant, and to date, the Grand Coalition has done nothing legislatively to combat it. They have done nothing legislatively to combat it. Action SA believes that there's an urgent need for reforms, starting with a constitutional amendment to establish a new Chapter 9 anti-corruption agency. We will champion this in Parliament. We will encourage and canvass the support of other political parties, and those parties that won't support us, we will expose them for their comfort in corruption. Cognizant of the high thresholds for such amendments today, we make a public clarion call to all parties to get involved and to support us. Long term, in line with our core value of non-racialism and inclusive economic growth, long-term economic reforms are crucial to spur growth and effectively address the legacies of our past. Our country faces economic stagnation, impoverishing our people while the government seems paralyzed, with the left foot not knowing what the right foot's doing, and the GNU has compounded that confusion as far as we're concerned. We've seen a lot of tiptoeing in the GNU around principal positions that parties held before they joined the GNU. We are going to focus on inclusive economic empowerment. We've got some very specific ideas around that, around a universal basic income stimulus, the Opportunity Fund, and Alan Beasley will champion the economic policies and the opportunity policies of Action SA. So if you want to know anything about that, please contact Alan. He is the champion of the people that are oppressed because we don't have enough money. He's also championed the fact that SARS is underfunded and they undercollect revenue, and without revenue you can't run a proper government that cares for South Africans. Action SA will further propose a tiered system for minimum wage and tax incentives for companies. These incentives would allow for businesses to claim 110% of wages paid to historically disadvantaged groups as an operational expense rather than relying on racial quotas. This approach aims to increase employment opportunities and foster company growth. In the current term, Action SA, under the leadership again of Lerato Ngobeni, intends to introduce a reserve sector bill that fundamentally reforms our 900 billion rand township economy that is currently dominated by undocumented foreigners, if I can put it euphemistically. She is championing a policy of sponsors for locals. It's not about sponsors. It's about a 9 billion rand economy that is not in the hands of South Africans and poor South Africans that need it and that should be running it. And we want to transform that. Lastly, Action SA believes that these key legislative priorities, as I've outlined, will set the tone for bold and necessary reforms to place South Africa on the path towards growth and the entrenchment of good governance principles in keeping with our commitment to being a constructive opposition. Action SA is not merely in opposition to howl and reject, but to engage and propose sound alternatives. In that regard, right next to me is the chairperson of Action SA, Michael Beaumont, who's now going to give you a perfect example of how you can be in opposition and be constructive and be objective, and how you can effectively hold the government to account. Michael Beaumont will take us through our GNU performance tracker platform that he is introducing. Thank you, Michael.
Right, I think everybody knows that I'm not you,
Oh.
so you can definitely take that. Greetings and welcome to members of the media, my colleagues from Action SA, and most importantly, those South Africans following these proceedings from home. I think you'll all agree with me when I say Parliament has become a place where the opposition has died in South Africa. And this is why we have such incredibly important work to do for Action SA. And I'm reminded of a very important quote that was attributed to Winston Churchill in the Second World War, when it said, "Never has so much been owed by so many to so few." And when you think about the work that these 6 members of Parliament are going to have to do in holding accountable a colossus of a 70% GNU, I think that saying becomes entirely apt. I want to remind colleagues here that Action SA is not outside of the GNU because of an accident. We took a very conscious decision not to join the GNU, and we conveyed that decision to the ANC at the time, after the 29 May elections, to say that we are deeply concerned about what happens when the opposition gets co-opted into government. What happens when the watchdogs are now driving around in German sedans with that soft leather, and they aren't able to be the watchdogs any longer? Because if you believe that power corrupts, well then, my goodness, 70% power is going to corrupt most absolutely. And this is where we need a strong opposition in South Africa. And as Athol, my colleagues, already indicated, that opposition is going to have to arise from a 6-seat party, because it's not going to arise from the official opposition or the EFF. We need a constructive opposition in this country. I think it's important to note that the 9th of October last week marked officially 100 days of this GNU, Grand Coalition, depending who you talk to. And it becomes necessary for us to take stock as a country. And one of the reasons why it's become necessary is you can't deny that there's a national optimism. That national optimism is very clear wherever you go. But the question is whether that optimism is based on anything tangible that we can hold in our hands and we can believe. Because we need to understand that this wouldn't be the first time South Africans had placed their hope in something that turned out to be hopeless. In 2009, South Africans placed their hope in Jacob Zuma. And for an initial period anyway, criticism of Jacob Zuma was seen to be a bad thing. In 2018, they placed their hope in Cyril Ramaphosa. And in the beginning, the president could do no wrong. And you could see where that turned out. So I wouldn't be mistaken to say that the GNU could be the third time bitten type scenario around which we need to be alive as a country to certain realities that are starting to emerge as alarming patterns in our country in relation to this government. And particularly of concern is the fact that we're now seeing multi-party delivery of the same old politics that was voted out in the 2024 elections. Political parties horse-traded around how they would vote on the Phala Phala issue as part of their negotiations. Parties that once said we need a smaller cabinet now form part of the biggest cabinets in South African history. The Bella Act has been passed, NHI is moving through swiftly, and believe it or not, people are breathing life back into the secrecy bill in the year 2024. Cadre deployment continues unabated. As a matter of fact, the opposition now participates in it, with memos asking for leniency on the minimum standards required to appoint people. And now you have a justice minister implicated in the VBS saga, giving the president a pass on his saga in Palapala. I would say the time for opposition has never been more than now. And what we are growing increasingly concerned about, and which has led us to the point where we believe a tracker of government performance is necessary, is it looks like we have an Instagram government that has emerged in South Africa. A government that tends to make announcements and tweets more than it does in terms of policy or legislative reforms in a real way. So we will read that there's now a war against the construction mafia. Is there? Has anyone been arrested? Have there been any investigations? The same goes for borders. We have the Minister Abahambe, who is now participating in a government that has demonstrated that it spends, and I quote, 200 million rand a year in deportations on people who should not be able to enter our country if there was a properly managed border. We have people saying that this is going to be the fight against corruption, but when they go and sit in their cabinet, they sit next to those implicated in corruption. And now, of late, you now start to see what I now call matriconomics. The tendency of having ministers who obviously have not had the benefit of studying economics taking on the credit for the international oil price. So when the fuel price comes down, that's the GNU. But when the justice minister is implicated in VBS, no, that's not us. But you can't have it both ways. You can't be fish and fowl. You have to stick to your principles. And I think what we're seeing is a real concern that in the place of real reforms that we should be seeing, we're seeing short-term gains of claiming credit for things that do not belong here. The difference between correlation and causation. The fact that something happens while you're here doesn't mean it happens because you are here. And I think the biggest concern that we're seeing right now is the silence around the July policy Lekgotla. We were told that this grand coalition was going to a Lekgotla in July to announce policy reforms. And ever since then it has been radio silence. What reforms have emerged? Which direction is our economy going to go in? How are we going to defeat crime in our country with reforming our criminal justice system? These issues are just silent. And that's why the work that we are doing is so important in announcing this tracker today. Because if this government is not going to tell us what is its strategy, in which direction is it going, and how we should hold them accountable in terms of their KPIs, that job now falls to the unofficial opposition of South Africa. And that's what we are going to be spending a little bit of time talking about today. So behind me you will see a website which is freely accessible to the South African people, and we will avail it to you members of the media. It will become a point of reference so that ever you are looking for a factual report on this government's performance rather than an emotional one, you will see it there, and you will see all of this data that has been established with the intention of creating a baseline of where we are right now as a country and where we will be going forward as these statistics come out over the course of the next 4.5 years. And in so doing, we can actually have a situation where the priorities and the key performance indicators of our country are being defined because the government is clearly not undergoing that task. So the first will come as no surprise, it's unemployment. And we don't use the narrow definition because people who are discouraged work seekers because of a failing economy are absolutely unemployed like everybody else. And as a matter of fact, you will see that this is a trend that continues to move in the wrong direction, and we hope deeply that it turns around. Let me be very clear, Action SA does not rejoice in any of these statistics. These statistics represent the hurt and pain of South Africans and their families. We must be very cognizant of that as we go through these numbers. But there can be no government that claims any success as long as this graph is moving in the wrong direction. CPI inflation has started to move in the right direction. And when we call ourselves a constructive opposition, it's not here just to tell you what is wrong. that has started to move in the right direction for the first time in a very long time. But we must ask ourselves the question, is it moving in the right direction because of anything of this government? Or are we looking at a decline in inflation arising from the reduction in the oil price from the international price of Brent crude? These become important things that we will continue to track going forward, because as long as it is more and more expensive for the South African family to be a family, then we're going to have to be a strong opposition to behavior that drives that graph in the wrong direction. Support offered to small businesses. This is not our favorite statistic. The South African government likes to track processes and not outcomes. But nonetheless, what we're seeing is that 2023 was a very, very bad year for the annual number of small businesses supported by the state through loans. And this is going to be something we're going to have to monitor very carefully, because any science behind how we grow our economy knows that the backbone of a growing economy is small business. We move on to perhaps some of the most important ones. Economic growth, currently at 0.4%. Debt to GDP ratio of 72.2%, and foreign direct investment facilitated by the state of 16.6 billion rand. These numbers all have to change in a very serious way before any government can start to claim any level of success around our economy. The next statistic is a good one, and one that we celebrate very much, because it's one of the few things that are moving in the right direction, and we give credit where it is due. The Minister of Energy has done an outstanding job with his team at Eskom, and for the first time in a long time, South Africans are experiencing reprieve from the power outages that dominated our lives for so long. This will become an important thing for us to continue monitoring, though, because the goal is to keep the power on long term for the South African households and for the businesses that are going to be needing to move some of those other critical KPIs that we mentioned to you earlier. The next one is about how many households are still using bucket toilets. It is an important statistic because it talks about an important part of our social development strategies. And currently 371,266 households still experience this indignity, and this is something we will continue to track going forward, because it is a vital measurement of how governments are supposed to improve the dignity in the lives of those who are most vulnerable. Violent crime rates becomes the next important KPI, principally focusing on murders and sexual offences, which has been one of the greatest challenges in our criminal justice system. Those graphs have been moving in the right direction over the last 12 months, but it's very important to note that there's always a very significant question around what we are measuring this against. Is it being measured against all crimes committed, or is it measured against all crimes reported? And as people lose faith in their criminal justice system and the police, that starts to become more and more of a reality. Important, though, is that we need to see reforms in the sector for us to believe that these numbers are not just about reports, but actually about changes in our criminal justice system. The next KPI, unresolved high-profile corruption cases. And let's be clear, ladies and gentlemen, this problem is never going to get better as long as the justice portfolio is presided over by a minister who has massive unanswered questions in this particular department. But while there were over 300 cases in May 2024, that has now risen to over 400 unresolved high-profile cases of corruption in October 2024. This is clearly an indicator moving in the wrong direction, and what we really wait to see is whether this GNU is going to hold itself accountable and deal with a scenario where you sit next to people in your cabinet meetings who are the subject of these investigations as much as they are the colleagues. Youth literacy rate becomes the selected criteria for our education KPI, focusing on a dynamic that since 2019 there's been a decline in youth literacy, and we want to make sure that the interventions of this government, and the minister in particular, is focusing on youth literacy as a vital measurement of the success of our education system. New HIV infections is a graph that has been moving in the right directions year on year, but there's a very ambitious target set of those infections being lower than 8,800 by the year 2028, just 4 years away, which looks highly unlikely when you look at where we are right now. And this will become an important indicator. I think we're very grateful to have someone of Dr. Kgosi Leklape's caliber to assist us in understanding the interventions that are going to be required to drive this number in the right direction. Our ports management becomes a vital part of our infrastructure measurements. Ultimately, the South African ports have slid down in Durban to 398th in the world, in Cape Town 405th in the world, which I believe is officially listed as the worst port in the world. Now this, as you can understand, has got to be a vital part of our infrastructure turnaround, and any extent to which an infrastructure portfolio is spending its time while this is being allowed to continue is a very serious question mark around the strategic priorities. The freight rail performance has doubled in the wrong direction. In 2023, the average freight was 309 minutes over the target time. It's now 779 minutes over the target time, and that is moving in the wrong direction as well. I need to stress that we are going to continue to build this tracker over time to include other important KPIs that don't arise from official government reports, but do arise from, for example, from our questions in Parliament. Our MPs are posing questions every day that will tell us how much is being spent on international travel, because I notice that this government is not just an Instagram government, it's a jet-setting Instagram government. It's traveling the world every single day with very large entourages, and we need to see what that's costing the South African people and what returns they are getting for it. We want to see the cost of blue lights. We heard there were going to be no blue lights, but there seems to be a lot of blue lights. We want to know exactly who is using those and who is not, and we already noticed that our parliamentary question to find that question out was refused. They would not tell us the answer as to which ministers are and are not using blue lights. Now this is supposed to be a government that is reforming our country, but that is the kind of Stalingrad style politics that we thought we had done away with in South Africa a long time ago. I wonder if all those people who supported parties in this GNU would support the idea that we can't find out who's using blue lights and who is not. Interesting, huh? I think the important point to say is this. If you are to grade this grand coalition government in its first 100 days, the grade would be an E, because there has been no strategy direction in our country. There has been no revision of the NDP. There's been no setting of national priorities. As a matter of fact, it looks like individual parties in the coalition are setting their own priorities, separate from government. Can you imagine? There is not a clear set of outcomes-based KPIs so that we can all understand what is the scoreboard. We need to understand what the priorities of our country are and where we're going to invest in change. And in the process, what are the non-priorities from which we must take money so that the priorities get funded. But at the same time, you've got to tell the South African people, what is the scoreboard? What are we measuring? If these are the strategies and priorities, what are we measuring to determine what success and failure looks like? And the fact that this government is continuing, where others have before it, to operate in a manner that is not wanting to be held accountable, that becomes a very serious concern. And what about the policy and legislative reform agenda? Because all the tweets and Instagram posts in the world are not going to change the fact that government operates by policy and legislation. If you're not changing those things and moving those things in the right direction, you continue to have a multi-party delivery of the old agenda that got voted out in 2024. And I think from our point of view, as I wrap up, ladies and gentlemen, you will continue to see that this tracker will develop. We invite you, members of the media and South African people, to continue to access its information and to monitor its progress, because we must never be so eternally grateful to a government because of what it avoided that we do not hold it accountable for its performance. Thank you.
Oh, musical chair. Thank you, Michael. Colleagues, I'm back. I think I must just be upfront and truthful about the fact that this moment for our organization, Action SA, is such a historic moment. And I think I speak for all of my colleagues who will follow, because the President and the National Chairperson, the President of Action SA, Dr. Herman Mashaba, who leads our movement, came here yesterday and today to literally give us our marching orders, to literally tell us what it is we are here to do in this parliament as members of parliament, We take that work very, very seriously. I can tell you that I think all of us, what we are about to present to you here today is making us all very nervous and very jittery, because the task at hand is not a small task. It's a huge task. It's a mammoth task. And it's one that we take with absolute humility and absolute gratitude and absolute commitment to doing the very best that we can to serve the people of South Africa. So I'm Lerato Ngobeni, as I said previously. I have the pleasure and the true honor to serve as the national spokesperson of our organization, as well as the parliamentary caucus leader. I'm very, very honored, and I thank the organization for putting that level of trust in myself to carry out that work. But it's easy to do that when you have capable, committed, and equally up to the task colleagues to work with. So before joining this movement called Action SA, I spent a lot of time as a professional in corporate communications, in social investment, and in active citizenship advocacy. I was one of the people who started a program called Civics Academy, and this was to ensure or help South Africans, particularly young South Africans, be active in the politics of our country. Because I remember when I was a student in politics, I used to have a political science professor, Dr. T, who used to say to us, if you don't get politics, politics will get you. And so the reality is that we all have a responsibility to be part of what is happening. And one of the critical things that I believe all of us here must champion is public participation. It is one of the things that is always lacking in terms of having the people of South Africa have their voice in terms of how we legislate and what we put into public policy. And so it is one thing that we all, as this caucus, are going to be championing. Throughout my life, I have been driven by a desire to see a better society for all people, particularly women in general, but black women in particular. And so this work I take very seriously, and it requires all of us, including myself, to be honest, to be humble, and to be a servant leader. When Action SA emerged as a voice of reason and accountability in our politics, it was clear to me that this is the platform where real change can indeed be delivered. I'm truly, truly honored, as I said before today, to be one of Action SA's MPs who believe in our party's values of ethical leadership, transparency, and putting the citizens at the heart of governance. In this parliament, I serve on key portfolio committees of Home Affairs, Basic Education and Small Business Development, where I'm dedicated to advocating for reforms that strengthen our border security, combat illegal immigration. And colleagues, I have to stress this. It's easy to speak and to imagine, but once you are on the ground and you see what is happening, we've just conducted an oversight of Home Affairs. The situation is dire, colleagues. We are not tracking undocumented foreign nationals in our country. Home Affairs has no idea as to who is here or who is not. People are coming in and out of Home Affairs to ask for documentation. They are getting it. However, there are also those who just come through and nobody knows who they are, where they are, and all of that. The other dire thing that I would like colleagues to note in this regard is the fact that we cannot deport certain nationals. Let me give you an example. If somebody in Botswana commits a crime like murder, and they find themselves here in South Africa, and the Botswana government is looking for them, our ethos is not to deport them because our constitution does not agree with the death penalty. So we effectively can have nationals of all, and I don't mean Botswana, just Botswana, anyway, because every time we speak about illegal immigration, we are accused of being, mostly targeting black foreign nationals or foreign nationals from the African continent. In this regard, we're speaking about anyone from anywhere in the world, wherever it is that they are coming from. And this is a very huge gap in our policy. Another department that needs, to be looked at, and which is one that I'll be championing as well, is government printing works. Government printing works is in a state that is so dire that it will follow in the footsteps of the post office. What is going on at government printing works is an absolute disaster, and we need to make sure that we can follow up on what is going on in that entity. The other one is the State Information Technology Agency, the SITA. These are folks that are responsible for everything digitally that happens at the Department of Home Affairs. And in every department, in every meeting, the SITA is a problem. And people need to look at that. And so during this 5-year term, I'm going to be relentless in pursuing issues that impact everyday South Africans. I always talk about the women waging war on poverty, unemployment, and gender-based violence in the Northern Cape. If there's one province that seems to be forgotten, it is the Northern Cape. And in this regard, colleagues, I draw your attention to what is happening in the Department of Basic Education in the Northern Cape, where gender-based violence against children in particular, school-going age girls, is, it's like pedophiles. When they are found, they just get remunerated by being taken to another department or another school. This is what is happening in the Northern Cape, and this particular group of women is fighting against that. Our caucus leader has already let you know, and I think now I'm going to formally let you know that I am known as the Spaza Queen. And this is because I'm unapologetic about the fact that some sectors in our society, particularly spaza shops and SMMEs, must be reserved for South Africans. And we are going to be driving this through the campaign that we started earlier this year called #SpazaForLocals. We are absolutely unapologetic about that, because it's not enough to say Abahambe. What must replace it? We want to champion the fact that South Africans must be capacitated, enabled to be able to fill that gap when those people are removed from our communities. And you've seen the disaster that has happened in Naledi, in Soweto. And so lastly, finally, colleagues, I want to say that there's absolutely no sense in the fact that our townships must be run over by undocumented foreign nationals. And so my objective is to leave Parliament with laws and policies that put South Africans first, and I'm unapologetic about that. We want to improve our education system, we want to defend our borders, and we want to safeguard our democracy. And so finally, I hope my contribution will help pave the way for a truly inclusive and prosperous South Africa. And I thank you all for your indulgence. Thank you so much. The next person who will follow, I believe, is the Honorable Ellen Beasley.
Thanks, Loretta. So just a bit of background, I'm a chartered accountant with a master's degree in development studies. I've been in business most of my life, and several years ago I co-founded a philanthropic private equity company which has and continues to do amazing work. My main driver for putting my hand up to be a member of Parliament was to be a voice for the unemployed. The unemployment statistics in our country are horrific, but behind those numbers are real lives and real stories. The impacts of unemployment on individuals and families are devastating. I'm hoping, as being an MP with Action SA, to be a rational, constructive, uncompromised voice that represents the unemployed in Parliament. Currently, I'm a member of the Standing Committee on Finance, an alternate member on SCOPA, DTRC, and Auditor General. Because of the critical nature of the Standing Committee on Finance and its huge time commitments, it is a committee that I have decided to prioritise. Currently, there are two big issues that I'm driving in this committee. Firstly is the increase of funding to SARS. Based on discussions had and based on international benchmarks, SARS is significantly underfunded. With government facing huge financial constraints and with SARS collecting over 90% of government revenues, and with a tax gap estimate of 300 billion, it is bizarre that SARS does not receive more funding. The underfunding of SARS is a legacy matter, and it must be addressed. It's a no-brainer. The second issue is to bring government debt to the forefront of discussions. South Africa's spiralling debt and the cost of servicing such debt is severely limiting our country's developmental potential and is leaving a nasty legacy for future generations. In 10 years, debt has grown from 1.4 trillion to just over 5 trillion, and our debt servicing cost has gone from 9.7% to 17.4% of government expenditure. Our interest bill is over $1 billion a day, and as a country, we have nothing to show for this debt. My concern is that Parliament has put their head in the sand, hoping the debt crisis will go away. It will not go away. It is getting worse and must be at the forefront of discussions, and hard decisions need to be made. Thank you.
Well done.
You see, I told you we were nervous. Who's next? Doc. Dr. Letlape. Colleagues are not coming back. Dr. Letlape will come, followed by Derelyn James, and then after Derelyn, Malebo will close. Thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon. I hope there's an interpreter. I'm going to speak in Tswana, like we do in Parliament. My name is Jose Letlape. I'm an ophthalmologist by training, a health activist by choice, and a politician by cohesion from the president. You know, when I came to Parliament after a few weeks, one of my reflections was the fact that I never knew that shallowness could run so deep. And it was frightening. And in the following weeks, I then found out that shallowness can actually be contagious. And you fear of descending to the bottom with everyone else. Now, I am a member of the Portfolio Committee on Health. I'm also an alternate member of the Portfolio Committee on Women, Youth and People with Disabilities. Public service clashes with health, so I can't do my duties there. And one of the frightening issues is the fact that in health, we are committed to separateness in South Africa. And we keep different poles. But having done that, we gaslight the nation into this Ramaphoria of NHI, which is basically the greatest form of gaslighting. NHI is a funding concept, and as such in Parliament, it would be described as a money bill. But what is conspicuously absent from it is any comments from Treasury or from the Minister of Finance about the financing mechanisms. And just having come from an oversight visit, you see the fact that provincialization doesn't work. There's no coordination. You can't have a national minister, provincial delivery, because it creates a system of no accountability. Less money reaches the front line for healthcare. And one of the other major factors that nobody wants to talk about is the fact that we have foreigners overburdening our healthcare system. In some of the maternity facilities, more than 50% of the women giving birth are foreigners. Where's the funding going to come from? When you look at NHI, nobody talks about how they are going to be funded in this healthcare system that takes care of everybody. Now, in the Portfolio Committee of Women, Youth and People with Disabilities, I have a personal issue to grind in terms of femicide, because I lost my daughter the day after the election. And what you see there is what you see across government, where there's a lot of money being spent on governance structures, a huge cabinet, commissions, administrators, but very little money on the ground for programs. Just like in health, we got lots of bureaucracies, lots of administrations, 9 MECs, a health minister, all of whom have questionable competencies, but there's no money on the ground for drugs. Lastly, I saw a patient where in the community health center, the turnaround time is 240 minutes. This gentleman, 73 years old, had been sitting on the benches for 9 hours and have not been attended to. So until we have skin in the game, until it's about us, it'll never get fixed. And what I assure you is the policy of the Action SA of saying public officials should do public hospitals will be implemented. That's what I will drive for. And I'll ensure that the president of this country uses public health care with other public officials and public servants. That's the only thing you're going to fix health care. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Devlin James. Devlin James, anti-drug and social activist always. Fellow South Africans, Action SA leadership, members of the media, I greet you in the name of servanthood. In my maiden speech in Parliament, I said that while I may be new to Parliament, I am not new to the challenges faced by many South Africans. Hence, it's been 100 days of the voter's voice, the ordinary voice on the ground, finally finding expression in Parliament. And as I always say, based on what I've observed, so kan dit nie aangaan nie. Allow me to reflect on the 3 portfolios in which I serve: Portfolio Committee for Correctional Services, Can Prison Be Prison Again? An Action SA stance that I continue to drive. Over the past week, we've conducted oversight at several prisons, and what I saw was really shocking. With foreign nationals, undocumented foreign nationals, taking up space, contributing to the overcrowding of almost over 200%. That is ridiculous. When I asked why is this the case, we were told that we need to consult these criminals first, and based on their permission, only then can we deport them. That gaan nie so aangaan nie. I also want to reflect on the Portfolio Committee on Police. Now, there's no need for me to highlight the many challenges. As South Africans, we are subjected to these heinous crimes daily. My message to the Minister and the National Commissioner focuses on the lack of resources at community police stations across South Africa. It is sad that at my oversight visit in my community where I hail from, there were only 2 vehicles servicing that community. I made a few calls, and I believe that those vehicles will be delivered this week still, and that's what it's all about. The work in Parliament isn't as much working in Parliament, it is staying connected to the people on the ground and actually making impact on the ground. I always say that we have so many shortages and lack of resources at our police stations, and those vehicles don't get exchanged. The only vehicles that gets replaced regularly are the vehicles of this bloated cabinet and of the ministers. How sad is that? On time, and even get replaced with brand new vehicles. Social development, no secret, the only department where people actually get promoted for corruption, where people get moved from one department, from provincial to national, if they are found guilty. Dat gaan nie so aangaan nie. I have called for all of those people who has been on leave for more than a year, especially in Gauteng, to come and account to Parliament as a result of their unethical behavior. We saw that the food bank in Gauteng, imagine the state of this country, and a food bank closes down as a result of unethical officials, and we say it is business as usual. It's not going to happen. I can go carry on with my observations in the portfolios that I serve on, but I want to say, although I can say, you know what, I remain committed to giving my 100%, and I've really, really done my best. But I cannot say that it ends there until we hear the ordinary South Africans saying, you know what, we can feel the impact of the work you are doing. Only then can we say we have worked to serve this country. I dedicate these remarks to the 4 youngsters that were gunned down in Reiger Park 2 days ago. It shows the state of our police and the state of this country. I thank you.
Greetings outstretched to the House at large. As said before, I'm Malebo Gobe. I'm the youngest member of this caucus and this parliamentary caucus. Just a brief background, I've got a master's in international relations and politics. I have worked in various sectors, including the water sector and Rand Water, and also I founded a charity where I assist child-headed households, and just before this I was the spokesperson in the Limpopo province of Action SA, right before taking up this responsibility of being in this parliament. See, I'm proud to be here to account to the people of South Africa with the work that they've entrusted us. And just, it comes at a time where we've just concluded our first oversight, which was an eye-opening experience. I mean, beyond this August House and beyond the debates that take place in the 7th administration, we got to interface and really see the work that we do that translates into the daily experiences of our people. Now, the committees that I serve on are the core face of services on water and sanitation, public works and infrastructure, and transport. And as the youngest person in this caucus, I'm honored to be given this responsibility to serve people, but in particular young people, in Action SA's long-standing efforts to address critical infrastructure challenges, improve access to clean water and sanitation services, and enhance the country's transport systems. Now, the DPWI, which is Public Works and Infrastructure, has shared its vision to make South Africa a construction site. And I happily welcome this in my maiden debate. However, it has become glaringly clear to me that before any construction can start in this country, we need deep institutional reforms. The procurement needs to be reformed. It cannot be that we continue to award contract to contractors that only have capital and financial muscle but lack capacity to complete the simplest of tasks. There needs to be political will to institute consequent management for contractors who abandon projects and officials who are found guilty of malfeasance. We need to confront decisively rampant project delays that are costly to the public purse. As it stands, it costs the public 13 billion rand for these projects that are delayed. Now, Public Works and Infrastructure, as the country's biggest landlord, needs to reclaim hijacked buildings, which we believe need to be repurposed for better public services. And finally, in the spirit of not leaving anyone behind, I will continue to champion the reformation of the EPWP program, which affects young people. In its current form, we believe that it does not provide sustainable solutions to the unemployment crisis. The DDG of EPWP has already expressed interest in working with us together, and I'm excited for this opportunity. As you know, transport is the lifeblood of this economy, and when people can move quickly, cheaply, and safely, our economy grows. However, there is much to be desired. Just this morning, the trains were delayed by an hour and a half in the mother city, causing havoc on our roads and for commuters. I will continue my stringent oversight of entities like PRASA to ensure that they stay on track. And finally, when I do my reflections, I think back on 2 years ago in my home province in Limpopo under Action SA when we started driving the issue of the Giyani Water Project. And just a month ago, we returned back to Giyani with the Deputy President and the Minister. And this time I returned as an MP, and we witnessed the first 9 batch of villages receive water reticulation in their homes. And by the end of December, we're envisaging that 24 villages will be opening their taps. There's this kind of work that ensures that we continue to fix the lives of South Africans and inspire change. And I'm hoping that in the 7th administration, I will be able to do that within these committees that I serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Malebo, and I owe Malebo an apology. You know, when you have these types of sessions, you forget because you really want to get what is in your spirit out, and so we keep disturbing the mic. We do have other South Africans beyond this room who are watching us online, and so that is why if you see that she stopped and paused, it's because I literally kicked her elbow with mine. And so thank you very much. I think it's very clear, the delivery of the colleagues, and I hope that the message that they had brought to you here this morning really demonstrates the fervor and the commitment and the determination that we all hold to do this work. With that said, I'm going to now welcome the President of Action SA, Mr. Herman Mashaba, a leader who I think all of us are very proud to be led by. The work that you do, sir, really inspires us, and the commitment also inspires us to be as committed as you are. I don't think I've seen anyone work as hard as you do, and as a result of that, we also are inspired to do more than what you do. At your age, I'm half your age, and so, you know, the fact that you can still run, you know, at the speed that you run means that we all can do it. And so, with those few words, I welcome you to the podium. Thank you.
Good afternoon, South Africans. Good afternoon, members of the media. My Super Six members of Parliament, our national chairperson. Thank you so much for this great opportunity. I mean, what especially to you, the media, for obviously making the time to come and really listen to us. Remember when we as a party took a decision to deploy these 6 great South Africans to Parliament, we committed to get them to account to people of South Africa, because we strongly believe as a party that their representation is not the representation of Action SA as a political party. Action SA is a vehicle that they are using to account to South Africans, because they're here to serve people of South Africa, not to serve Action SA as a political party. So thank you so much, and the caucus leader, Athol, for really accepting this huge responsibility. I mean, at the time when I made the commitment to the media and people of South Africa that we will account to them on a quarterly basis, at the time I had not really spoken to them, but I decided they cannot only account to us as a political party, they must account to the voters, they must account to the people of South Africa. And I'm so profoundly proud for them for having accepted this responsibility, and listening to them this morning makes me so proud to be a South African. It makes me so proud to be a human being. It makes me so profoundly proud for having left my business to get into politics, because realized after 1994, 10 years later, my country beginning to really taking a wrong direction. In 2015, I then took a decision to say, look, I'm not going to run away from this country. Under the current constitutional framework, let me take advantage of this great opportunity this country has afforded me over almost 4 years, close to 4 years or so in business. Use my privileged position to really play that small role in my life. I'm one person who actually believes that failure is not an option. I will only accept failure after having tried. That is really my motto in life. That is in my DNA. And listening to my colleagues this morning, I'm really very proud. So Athol, Lerato, Dr. Klape, Malebo, Erlene and Alan, I'm really very proud. Just really listening to you, being accountable, being prepared to really face the nation to say this is our responsibility. So this is just really the beginning. And I think Michael and your team for having developed this KPI, I think, you know, I saw it for the first time this morning. Michael just gave us an overview. And I'm really so proud that we are going to really be measuring this government not on ideological criticism, because we've taken a decision as a political party to be an effective, constructive opposition. Because if you look at what has happened to our country, and it's currently happening right now, we have high levels of corruption. High levels of corruption that makes me ashamed sometimes of what's happening to my country. And at the same time, we look at how South Africans are being polarized along racial lines, it actually makes me more determined to really be in politics. The job that is punishing really very seriously my personal liberties, completely compromised. But I think it's something really worth it for future generations. And I think if I look at the space that Action SA has to play at a national level, crucial, because we cannot really develop this country with the levels of corruption we have experienced over the last 30 years. At the same time, we cannot really prosper or develop this nation if we are not going to get South Africans to coexist. Because if you look at ourselves as a country, we can't undo what is the current status and situation of our country. What we need a political party that can actually unite us and get us to accept coexistence. And that's something that we are unapologetic about as Action SA, for really playing that this critical role. And I think and I believe it's important that I bring you up to speed with our participation in municipalities. As I've indicated, at national level, as a political party 4 years old, there's something that I think you guys need to really be aware of. Action SA is only 4 years old. And I remember after the elections, because we had too much expectations, but reality dawned on us. We had the 6 superb members of parliament. Just for your information, Action SA, 4-year-old party, we are represented by 101 public representatives in all 3 spheres of government. We achieved this in 4 years. As much as yes, we were devastated when the results came out. But on reflection, a few weeks down the line, we realized, my goodness, we are only 4 years old, but we are represented in all 3 spheres of government. And as you've just really noticed, the last few weeks, with the latest development yesterday in the city of Tshwane, our executive mayor announcing her executive team. It's a new political party, only 4 years old. When some people had already written our death warrant, we've really bounced back. We are now leading the capital city of this country. Put together a team that we are confident is going to turn that city around. The city of Tshwane is very important. It's unfortunate what really happened, but we had to do everything in our power. We have the constitutional right to defend ourselves, and that's exactly what we did. I'm a very strong believer that when you are faced with a threat, and a threat that was to really destroy you, what you do, you attack first. And I remember one incident in 1978, after writing my exam, visited my family in Orlando West, and my cousin was going to Bloemfontein to go and visit his family and asked me to accompany him. And one of the nights, I spent a week in Bloemfontein, in Tabanch, when in the townships, the Kuchabel, or whatever the township it is called. I remember actually one evening after having some drinks, I was tired, I wanted to go home, and I decided to leave on my own. It was around about 1 or so in the morning. And in one of the streets, as I was approaching home, I see a group of guys, 3, 4, and I wasn't there sober as one would have loved to. And here's the danger. And I had no protection. But fortunately enough, where and how I grew up was to always, when you are faced with danger, attack first. Because I realized these guys, what they were planning to do was to rob me, you know. and I said, no, I'm not going to allow this. So as I approached them, what I did, I charged at them first. And obviously, they saved my life and it gave me a chance to go through. And this is exactly what happened in Tshwane. It came to my attention that there was a plot to destroy our organization. And I decided, Herman, this is what you did in 1978. Attack first. And that's exactly what we did. And here we are. We've ended up being the leader of a coalition government in the city of Tshwane. Something that I never planned, but it happened, and we had to protect ourselves. And I'm overly proud of the work that our executive mayor, Dr. Nasiphi Moya, has done in the last 2 weeks on her own. Now you can imagine today she started with a full team of 10 MMCs who she's going to hold accountable. Some people are thinking that Action SA is going to be controlled by forces outside. I can assure you Action SA is going to lead this multi-party. And why we're going to succeed? It's because we've taken a view of running and operating with humility, with honesty and ethical leadership, and a commitment to the people of Tshwane. That's exactly why I believe we will really succeed. And are we going to follow the same model in other municipalities? Give us the chance to really look at, to see if we can use our influence in the city of Johannesburg, in Ekurhuleni, because that's where we have the numbers. And people of Gauteng deserve better. And I believe if Action SA does not really engage on this particular matter, will be failing not only people of Gauteng, will be failing people of South Africa. So we are going to involve, let's put Tshwane to bed and ensure that we deliver services to all the communities and residents of Tshwane. And we'll start negotiations to see how Action SA can play a crucial role in the turnaround of the city of Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni, because that's where we have the numbers to make an influence and ensure that come 2026, because we've already accepted South Africa has entered an era of coalitions, and we will work with other parties that are prepared to work with us, but work with us with respect, humility, and we take the arrogance out of the kind of structures that we will develop. The reason why I think we managed to put together this government in the city of Tshwane was our approach to negotiations. We went to these negotiations with humility. We went to these negotiations to negotiate the best deal for people of Tshwane. And I strongly believe that we will deliver and hold our people accountable. We are not going to tolerate corruption. We are not going to allow anyone to divide the people of Tshwane. We are going to really be the vehicle that is going to unite South Africans through our governing measures that we're going to be putting in place in the city of Tshwane. So thank you very much to everyone who've really participated in this, and look forward to report back to you in 3 months' time again to take you through what these colleagues are doing in Parliament, very important institution to safeguard and ensure that it delivers for people of South Africa, create a better future for our children and our grandchildren. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr.